Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Jonathan Chizick, the head of marketing for a company called AppZen. If you're not familiar with the company, basically what they do is they got this very powerful artificial intelligence that looks at expense report creation, compliance, and the auditing of those reports. So if you're in a large organization, something that would usually take days and days and many, many people, the sort of traditional way, can now literally be done in minutes. So this is what AppZen does. Jonathan's going to talk to us about AppZen, if it's suitable for your business, how to implement it, but he's also going to be speaking a little bit about what he's been doing within the startup community. So Jonathan's very active. He works with a number of organizations, including 500 startups, which I'm a big fan of. So Jonathan, he does this work with startups. He helps them with their business models. He helps them grow their businesses. As we go through the conversation, Jonathan's also going to be looking at and discussing how to actually implement AI, what you should be looking for if you're new to it, what to avoid, and sort of the pros and cons of artificial intelligence within your business. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Some really, really great gold nuggets in there. And yeah, all I can say, enjoy. Jonathan, great to have you here today. Jonathan is the head of marketing for a company called AppZen. AppZen is in fact the world's first artificial intelligence solution for back office automation. So what they actually do is they have powerful artificial intelligence that automates expense report creation, the compliance of those reports, and then the eventual auditing. So what usually takes days and lots of people to accomplish, AppZen actually simplifies that and reduces it down to minutes, and it's more accurate as well. But before we start talking about AppZen, Jonathan, share a little bit about your background. I see that you're very active in the startup community. You advise a lot of companies. You've worked with organizations like Candy Lab, Angel Partner Advisor, and a company that I really admire as well, 500 Startups. So share a little bit about your background, what you're doing, and where you're going, and how you, in fact, landed up working with AppZen and taking their business to the next level.
Yeah. So I mean, going back before that, about 15 years engineering, marketing experience at large global companies, say like Ford, Dell, Samsung. So really trying to leverage that experience over the last 5 years in helping startups. Get really excited in working with entrepreneurs who are looking at some new way of attacking a market, and it's really exciting and invigorating. So the last several years, that's what I've been focused on is helping startups, both advising, consulting with them, and working for some full time. And like you mentioned, 500 startups, other startup accelerators, a great way to get involved with the startup ecosystem and help as many people as possible. So really, the last 5 years, that's what I've been doing is helping startups implement growth platforms. So the last the longest 10-year times that I've had with startups in the last few years, both AppZen here and then with another company about 2 years ago, was coming in as the first business hire to implement the what is the marketing and sales platform supposed to look like? How should this company be growing? And it's pretty exciting to have this kind of blank canvas and try to figure it out. Lots of best practices out there, but you never know what's going to work till you actually try it. And that's what's exciting about it.
Fantastic. In terms of the startups, is there certain areas of the startup where you find that has required more attention? For example, is it the sales? Is it the product market fit? I mean, was there any sort of something that jumped out saying, well, most startups needed help in this particular area? Or is it just, say, the sales piece or the marketing piece that you were involved with?
It depends. But what I focus on is making sure that they're as closely aligned with who they think their customers are at first. So that kind of ties into product market fit, right? But what is product market fit? You have to talk to your customers and see how they're using your betas and your prototypes in order to determine whether you have product market fit. So if you're not already talking to customers or understanding their pain points, then that's kind of a red flag. And beyond that, it's not just getting product market fit. It's not like it's a milestone and then you don't ever have to talk to your customers again. It's very important to stay connected with them. It's going to help drive all of your marketing activities. It's going to have to drive all of your sales planning and sales strategies, and really feed into really all, like I said, all your messaging, all your marketing, all your sales activities.
So are you doing the similar thing right now then with AppZen? You're helping them, because they've been around for a while.
Well, to 2012, right?
Okay.
The end of 2012, kind of an official launch date for the company. Made some pivots over that time. I connected with the founders when they were in 500 startups, and they were just in the process of transitioning from one model to the next right about that time, and it was pretty exciting to hear what they were talking about. And it was one of those, because it was one of those areas that unless you're working in it, this back office processes, you just don't think about it. And the fact that they were, attacking this market or this area of the business that is typically ignored with something that's new was pretty exciting, because it seemed to me like, well, if it's being ignored by me, it's potentially being ignored by a lot of other people. Maybe there's some opportunities there. And so when I saw some of the types of clients that they were closing, some of these big name enterprises, it's, well,
Right.
there's something there, right? These customers, these type of customers would not be talking with them unless there was some sort of value there. So I, I've stayed in touch and joined them full time just over a year ago now, and to run all of their marketing and put their marketing processes in place and help with the growth, kind of build out the sales operations platforms and figure out how we're going to go to market. We're US based, but our customers are global corporations. So most of them have operations throughout the world. So they may be headquartered in the US, but they have, Hitachi is actually, headquartered, outside the US, but they have large operations here. And we have companies like, Sunrun, who is primarily US based. We have First Solar. They're a global company. So really it's more about, they can be located anywhere. Right. It's just more of, the customers that we've talked to are the ones close to us so far.
Right. The interesting thing is, I can only imagine how much time AppZen must save companies on sort of back end. From an expense perspective on the front end, me being a person that fills out expense reports myself, what a pain in the ass, first and foremost. That takes ages, and then getting all the receipts and all that kind of stuff. So I would imagine for an accounting department, it must consume a lot of time to actually go through all this stuff, verify it, sign off on it. So this is where I, from what I understand, you guys bring tremendous value in terms of automating a lot of this work.
Right. And, you mentioned the user-facing portion of expense processing, and that's where, the employees have to input their expenses into something, anywhere from Excel to, some companies still use paper spreadsheets. Companies like Concur and Oracle have, they've their iExpense tool. Large companies are pretty much mostly transitioned into those sorts of automation, which makes it a lot easier, although it really is a pain in the butt to enter expense reports still. If you think back to 15, 20 years ago, filling out expense reports in spreadsheets and stuffing envelopes with receipts and mailing them in and then waiting 6 weeks to get paid, the process is much easier now. And that's where AppZen had started, with a tool to help with that process, going back a couple of years. And we came up with what today is known as a chatbot to create expense reports. But through that process and talking with these customers, saw this just kind of wide open space to go after the back office. Because we were looking at it's an employee facing tool, but through that, in talking to some of these accounting and back office folks, realized that, wow, there are some processes here that are, haven't changed in years and years and years. And the only way for these companies to get more efficient was to try to find ways to do the same thing they were doing, but cheaper, which typically meant either doing less of it or offshoring it, or some combination of that. So what we would see were companies, there's no way it was cost effective to audit 100% of their expense reports, no way to get the level of detail in each one of those. It just didn't make sense. And even when they would be offshored, it would typically be, here's the limited things that we're going to check. We're going to use random sampling, so we're only going to check, say, 15% of our expense reports. And maybe we'll use some thresholds for cost and say these type of costs over this amount automatically get checked. And the checks would consist of things like verifying receipts. So someone sitting in an office would be going through this receipt all day long, just looking at a computer screen, matching, okay, this receipt, does the name on the receipt match the name on the expense report? If yes, click here. And it seemed to us like, wow, this is something that really should be automated. Machine can do this not only so much faster, but more accurately and get more detail. So what we see is, these companies who had, cut down to 15% audits, offshored a lot of their resources. And what they're seeing is that our tools, catching up to 10 times more fraud and compliance issues, and at the same time reducing the cost for this audit by up to 80%. So really just streamlining the whole process and making companies more compliant.
Do you guys use third-party AI? I mean, I think what I'm trying to get to, for example, I got a call with the guys from Watson in a week or two, and do you leverage platforms like Watson or the Google stuff, or is it all proprietary?
It's proprietary.
Wow. Okay.
And that's where kind of the real value comes in, is the combinations of different variations of AI. So, AI can be many different things: machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing. But what we've done is find different combinations of those tools that deliver on this specific use case. So we have a patent on our Receipt IQ technology, which is similar to OCR, and then it can look at any sort of document and figure out what's on it. But typical OCR would look at that and just look for certain fields and match those fields into text online. What our tool does is looks at everything on that image, and then is using natural language processing to figure out, what is that? Is this even the right receipt? And then looking, okay, here's all the basic stuff that you typically get with OCR: the amount, the date, the name of the merchant. But now it's also looking at what else is purchased on there. How many people were in the party? And then going off and searching, okay, what does that mean? Is this within your T&E policy or not? Or does this indicate that this expense might involve something that's outside of your policy? And if it does, then it can indicate for the auditors to do something about it. And that's pretty cool. It's a combination of these technologies.
And AppZen does all that stuff. It does all the referencing from the policies to the number of parties in the for having a meal with you and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's we have a lot of best practices that we've built up over a number of very large clients. Every company, every new client has there's always one or two things that are specific to their company, but we'll look at their T&E policies and make sure that our tool is going to be able to screen to that policy. And then it's kind of off to the races. So it really depends. It's customized to the policy. The end users are able to, the end users being the auditors, customized to the standpoint of, if they decide that suddenly they are not okay with employees expensing alcohol on employee meals, for instance, right? They can flip that switch and take care of that themselves. So it really just looks, it's looking at the policy and everything that's checked. And some of the things like, referencing things like, number of people at a table, number of people in the party at a meal, right? That's something where, most cases, these things just go through. But say an employee submits an expense that's based on our tool's knowledge of that restaurant. We know that typical meals are within a certain range, say $30 to $50. They're submitting an expense for $100. That indicates it's far enough out of the range. There's probably something else going on there, right? If the number in the party indicates, hey, it's 3 people, then bam, that's an easy red flag. But even just the fact that it's so far out of the range indicates that there's a good chance they were entertaining someone else, that either, hey, maybe just honest mistake, they forgot to write down the client's name, which the company still needs to know because they need to have that for the tax authorities, or they were taking friends and family out and trying to do it on a company dime. But that's what this tool is doing, are things where, we're automating what humans would do, right, and taking it to another level. And given enough time and enough money, humans could do this, but it would require going in, looking at every single document, Google searching who this merchant is, Google searching everything that was purchased on there, and then using some intuition to say, okay, well, this is far enough out of the range, so maybe I should look at what else this employee has done in the past. It would just take a ridiculous amount of time for people to do this, but our machines can do that in minutes.
Fascinating. I'm curious, how much of this is out of the box? I mean, does it require a level of AI training, or is there enough data from all your other experiences to have it trained? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's enough for all of the standard sort of policy checks. There's enough that it's in there. If there's something new that a company has, if they've indicated that they have some sort of policy that's a little bit different than what we've seen with other companies, then we'll do a little bit of training. But it really, it's part of the customization that we'll do when we do an implementation. These are, I say implementation, it's usually just it's a couple weeks. They'll turn on the connection for their expense management software into AppZen, and we'll start pulling the data right away. That the results will start coming back, but we want to make sure that it's hitting everything that it needs to hit. And so over the first couple of weeks, we'll be looking at what sort of false positives or false negatives are identified, and then making adjustments based on that. And it's usually fairly minor stuff, but then after that, it's just kind of it goes.
Jonathan, how long would it take to implement AppZen? Is it just connecting with the sort of in-house system? Let's say it's Oracle, whatever it is. Is that where the effort is, and how long would it take, or is there anything else that you'd have to sort of build into the timeline to say, well, it's going to take X amount of weeks to implement and test?
I mean, 2 weeks is a good estimate. The connections we have, pre-built connections with our partners at both Concur and Oracle. So either and NetSuite. We can do other T&E providers too. Those are a little bit more work, but these pre-built connectors are, it's literally minutes to do the connection. It's just more about there's usually some privacy agreements that have to be signed on both sides for that data to flow. And then based on that, it's just settings on our side, settings on their side. It's good to go. That takes 5 minutes. And then the bulk of the implementation is, okay, let's actually run this and run it side by side with your current process to make sure that the client's comfortable that it is catching everything that they were catching before. And also, at that point, they'll also start seeing things being caught that weren't being caught before.
Right. And I know this is one of those, probably the answers is, well, it depends. But in terms of your ideal client, I mean, is it what economic sense to use AppZen? Is it, for example, if I have 10 employees or 10 salespeople that are out on the road all the time, is that too small, or would it be more of the sort of the enterprise level? I know we mentioned Oracle, and usually, I mean, Oracle is with bigger corporations. So is there sort of that threshold that where AppZen, or do you have a light version, or is there who is the ideal customer?
Yeah, I mean, we have one version, and what we typically see are mid to large enterprises are the ones who they understand what we do the best. They've been trying to do this in other ways, mostly manual ways or kind of random sampling methods, and they understand the pain point that's there. They weren't necessarily looking for a new solution because there wasn't really anything that they were aware of out there. So when they hear about AppZen, it gets really exciting. Like, wow, you mean I don't have to try to find, what's the next country that has lower cost labor that I can move my offshore auditors to in order to cut costs. Like now I can have dramatic increases in efficiencies and also get more accuracy. So AppZen, what we do is relevant for any company, but if we'll work with small companies, but we typically see that small companies have other priorities, or they look at it. There's just more trust, I guess, throughout the organization. So the assumption is, hey, employees are doing what they are supposed to be doing, and if not, I'm going to catch it because there's only 20 people here, so I'm going to catch it. Now, whether that's true or not, up for debate. But it's usually the mid to large enterprises that really they understand the pain points and see the benefit that AppZen can bring.
Right, and I'm sure that they would see immediate sort of huge returns just on the amount of hours that you guys are saving.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. A recent example, I had a customer who, within the first 2 weeks was so once we got through that customization process, reduced their resources dedicated to audit by 45%.
Wow.
We're still, so they were one of the companies that was actually doing 100% audit. Now, by 100%, I mean they were looking at 100% of the expenses. Now, the level of detail that they got to was not what we would do at AppZen. So what they were they were seeing is, they had this 3-day SLA that department had agreed to process this auditing. And it was getting to be a struggle as the number of employees increased, number of expenses go up. With AppZen, they're getting results back in, within minutes, right? And so their auditors were able to look at the results same day. So now they're able to reduce, almost by half the resources and, cut down their SLA by, from 3 days to 1.
So, I'm going to be putting some sort of links to AppZen, the AppZen website and stuff like that. But is there any particular path that if somebody wants to reach out to you, that you want them to connect through LinkedIn, or is it through the website and fill out a form? What's the most efficient way for you guys?
Yeah, the easiest way for anyone to remember is just go to appzen.com, and there's some forms. Request a demo is one, or contact us. Any of those forms, I'll actually get those. You can also, if you want to go direct to email, just send an email to sales@appzen.com.
Okay, excellent. And sort of, I know we're coming to the end of our agreed time. Can I just quickly ask you? You are in the heart of friggin' the tech world. Out sort of California way, you got all the Googles and the Facebooks and all the good stuff out there. So from your experience, as you're meeting with people, as you're going to your sort of 500 startup events, is there any particular trends that you're noticing as it sort of pertains to AI?
Well, one trend I see is that suddenly everything is AI. Everybody's calling what they have AI. So figuring out what they actually do can be a little more difficult. There's what I think. This is kind of ties in what I'm so excited about with AppZen is just this automation of these basic routine tasks that people can do today, but people don't necessarily want to do, and so there's lots of shortcuts being made, and outsourcing, and so what I see this really kind of ramping up and allowing existing resources like existing audit teams to get much more effective and efficient, and actually be spending more time on what they'd like to be doing, what they should be doing, which is okay, how do we resolve this issue, or how do we prevent this from happening in the future, as opposed to checking amounts on receipts. The other thing, so I would look at, AI is a very hot buzzword right now. Like I said, everybody's calling what they have AI. If you're an enterprise looking to implement it, you probably have, on your performance review objectives for the year, your CEO has probably pushed down some sort of AI objectives, and that's pretty broad and vague. But I would look at, what are some really specific use cases or processes within your company that you think AI could help with, and try to narrow down any sort of testing or implementation you do to as narrow a use case as possible. One, it's just going to be easier to have success, as opposed to saying, we're going to do all of our accounting through this AI tool. That's going to be a massive undertaking that could take years, right? Whereas something like AppZen, where it's, hey, we're just going to automate this T&E expense audit, right? There's other things you can do with AppZen, but this is the one that we're going to focus on. It's a 2-week implementation, and we're going to be able to show ROI very quickly. Because I think what you'll see with some of these larger, broader AI initiatives is that it's not really clear what the ROI is going to be. And,
right.
If the implementation takes 18 months before anything happens, and then maybe you see some results, maybe not, there's risk that the leadership in the business just kind of walks away saying, okay, that was $20 million down the drain. I don't know what it's actually doing. So really try to get as specific as possible when you want to try out AI.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Jonathan, so okay, this is my interpretation. So at this point in the game, because as you mentioned, there seems to be a lot of AI out there. Now, I must be honest, I didn't notice it until I started looking for it. It's almost like that reticular activating system. Now, to your point, I see it freaking everywhere. And as a business, I would imagine, to your point, is that if you're looking to implement AI, the first thing is identify what could AI be applied to, first and foremost. And I think that sort of the measure I once read was something like if it's digital and it can be done by human within 5 seconds or something, it could potentially be AI could be applied. The other thing is that you're probably better off at this early, I put early stage in quotation marks. I know AI has been around for years, but only really became popular in the last few. Is sort of you're probably better off with out of the box type solutions like AppZen, where you don't have to go and build and do extensive customization with not knowing what the outcome or the ROI would be. Whereas AppZen, you've got enough historic data to pull upon. You've taught the system what it needs to do, and I would imagine the tweaks are probably minor tweaks just to understand my company's policies. Or yeah, is that?
Yeah, that's fair. I think one differentiator when you're looking at implementation, right? If you need to have data scientists within your own company, then it could be an awesome solution, but it's probably not going to be a short-term implementation or something easy. Doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't do it, but things where there are very specific use cases like AppZen, and there's other ones out there, you don't need data scientists in your company. So it's the existing audit team or the existing T&E or accounts payable teams. Like, they can use this tool and they don't need to know anything about AI. They just need to know how it's going to show them the results and what they need to do with it.
Yeah, and just from personal experience, I mean, I realize the more sort of, and not data scientists in my particular case, but the more specialists you have to bring in, call it IT or whatever, you just know the bill's going to be freaking huge, And so the more you can use SaaS and outsource, you're usually better off from my own experience. Just one last thing. I mean, in terms of predictions, like, where do you see it from through your lens? And your business, where do you see AI going? What do you see happening?
Well, being in the Bay Area, I'm really looking forward to a lot more autonomous vehicles, just so I can get some work done during my long commute. One prediction, it kind of ties into what we do at AppZen, is I think you'll see a significantly reduced amount of offshoring back-end business processes. There's a big shift, or I don't know when it started, 20 years ago, right? To try to get to lower cost labor, and this race to the bottom for where can we find a place that'll do this even cheaper. With AI, it doesn't matter where it's done. You can keep that within your own company, within your own country, within your own data centers, your data systems. And so suddenly you don't have to worry about data privacy. You don't have to. There's a lot of issues that come up when you're transmitting data all around the world that suddenly you won't have to deal with. So I think companies will start to realize that, and realize that there's a lot of overhead with managing these offices around the world and these contractors around the world. If you can get rid of that, that's a good thing, and I think you'll see a reduction in that.
Apparently, in Toronto, or at least Ontario, we've given approval for autonomous cars as well. But for me, I mean, when you want to work, I probably want to have a nap in the back of the car.
Well, that too. Yeah, that would be less stressful than driving also.
And just really one last question, if you don't mind, Jonathan. So in terms of, let's say, one piece of advice for any company that's looking at potentially sort of implementing AI, either on a small scale or large scale, what advice would you give them if this is their first sort of exploration into AI? They haven't got a clue, pretty much like myself. I'm probably referring to myself here. What would be that one piece of advice that you'd say?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit before. I would say, don't be scared away by AI, but really take a hard look at what do you hope the results to be. Like, what's like any other technology, whether it's AI or an ERP tool or anything that you're implementing in your business, you're putting together a business case saying, I'm going to spend this much, and the results are going to be this much savings or this much more efficiency. You can do the same thing with AI. Just because it's AI doesn't mean that you should skip some of those steps. Like, it'd be important to look at it, and the fact that, say, like with AppZen, we're AI, which is great, but if you took away if you didn't know we were AI, we would still be delivering the same ROI. So if someone's using an AI term, don't be scared away by it, but kind of trying to boil down, like, what do you actually hope to get out of that solution, and have those objectives set in place ahead of time. And it's easier to do that when you have a more specific use case that you're going after, as opposed to saying, I'm going to automate all of my sales or all of my marketing or some huge initiative. If you can find one specific use case, then it's going to be easier to determine whether or not it works when you implement it.
Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate the insights, as do our community, talking about AI, AppZen specifically, and what we need to be looking for when we exploring AI within our businesses. So it's not so straightforward as in just let's put it in. I mean, as you pointed out, the objective and having the use cases and having a structured way of actually implementing and testing AI. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, I appreciate your time, and no doubt we'll be chatting again. And I will be putting the links on how to connect with Jonathan. And if you're interested in AppZen, it's appzen.com. Thanks for your time today, and have a great week.